Welcome to the God-Centered Recovery Podcast, brought to you by Narrowgate Ministries. This podcast is dedicated to giving you a God-centered approach to recovery and to life. Follow along. Let's get started.
Yeah. And that's crazy because, I'm thinking about the scenario and almost once the feds get involved, like usually the feds don't get involved unless they're going to give you 7 years. So if you tell me that you didn't serve 7 years in prison, I'm just going to be like amazed. Like,
well, yeah. Yeah. And so not only that, but like it was 7 years on one charge. and I had 5 of them. So,
yeah.
35 years, and then you double that as a crime of opportunity. And so it could have been serious. But once I issued that challenge, prior to that, I just need to fill this in because it won't make sense if I don't. I'd had a conversation with my mother where she said, "You're not my son. I don't want to hear from you. Excuse me. You made your bed, now lay in it." And she was just upset, To this day, she claims she didn't say it, but I can assure you she did. But it was almost like God had her say that specifically so that I would give up all hope, because that was my last lifeline. Like, if once my mom shut me off, I knew that I had no hope. And it was shortly after that I'd read the paper. Like, it was the next day. But an hour after I issued that challenge, I had called my wife. We got married a week before I burglarized this pharmacy. Okay. And yeah. And we'd actually got married in a funeral home, which was kind of funny.
Wow.
But yeah, we got married in a funeral home. She was, I had drug her into that lifestyle. She was nowhere near where I was, but she was definitely involved. She ended up getting probation from all of it, and she completed successfully, and her record's been expunged. But anyway, I called my wife, and she says, "Your mom wants you to call her." And I was like, okay, she probably just wants to yell at me or whatever, but I'll call her. And so I call, and she's first thing out of her mouth, she said, "Jesse, you're my son. You'll always be my son. I love you. Hang in there. We're getting you an attorney. We're going to get you some help." And I was just floored, because when my mom says, like, it's hard to imagine it without knowing who my mom is. But when my mom says something, that's it. You can write it down, you can chisel it into stone. It's not changing. And so for her to change that rapidly, after me issuing that challenge, I just kind of like looked up, like, okay,
something's working.
This may be you, it's kind of the conversation I started having. I still didn't want to believe that God was working on my behalf, but it's hard not to acknowledge that difference. And so within a couple days, I found out that my mom had gotten me the best attorney around. Guy's super high profile. Anyway, she got him, and within a couple weeks after that, I ended up this funny story. She said, "We're going to get you into rehab." The attorney said the best thing for you to do is to go to rehab and complete before you go to court. So we're going to send you to rehab, but I'm having trouble finding a place to get you in, because I spent all this money on this attorney and I don't have several $1,000s to get you into another place. And I was like, she said, "Well, one of them," she said, "it could be 30 days, could be 90 days, like 3 months, or it could be 6 months." I said, "Look, I don't care. It can be 30 days, 90 days, 6 months. It could be a year. I'm good with it. Like, I just want out of jail, send me to treatment." And God was well aware of everything that I was saying the entire time, obviously. And as soon as I said, "I don't care even if it's a year long," the only facility that could get me in was a year long, and it was absolutely free.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was going to make sure that this stuff stuck.
Yeah. And it was free,
Yeah.
which is crazy. Everybody charges a few $1,000s for treatment. And so to get in for free and then for an entire year is just unheard of. And so I ended up leaving. I was actually transported from the ADC, the Adult Detention Center, to their custody. They showed up at the bondsman's office, and I'm wearing the clothes that I was arrested in that had been like all moldy and because they were wet when I got arrested because I'd gotten like water all over them before they threw me down and stuff. But anyway, um, so I'm wearing these like stinky, nasty clothes because I just changed out of the orange jumper into this, and it's like I'm in their care. But I leave there and I go to this facility, and on the, like I remember pulling up in the driveway. They tell you certain things like because my story was so um, it was like such a big thing. You know, it wasn't like I just did drugs and then I'm at the facility, but I burglarized the pharmacy. You know, like I was a hero in the jail. You know, like everybody had
Yeah, brother.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. They had seen it on the news, they had seen it
Yeah.
in the paper, you know, like I was a big deal or whatever in the criminal world. Um they wanted to know where I hid the rest of it, you know, so when I got out, you know, and
Yeah.
they wanted to know all this stuff that didn't exist. But anyway, he tells me don't share any of that. Just come in, be humble. Stick to yourself. Do what we ask you to do, and you'll be fine. Well, I remember pulling up in the driveway, and I said, "Okay, I see." I'm talking to God. I'm like, "Okay, I see that you're working in my life. I see that you're doing something." Um, and I don't know what you're doing, but obviously everything that I've done up to this point has been wrong because I've screwed up everything. So I'm just going to be a blank slate and you teach me how to live. Just teach me. And that's what I did.
Mhm.
From day one, I was a blank slate. And for the whole next year, I fell in love with God, learned his word. I read his word every day. And then I started discovering that there were passages in the Bible that you could actually live out. I know that sounds simple, but or now it sounds simple to me, but at the time, I'd always seen the Bible as like something that was talked about on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
It was an old book, with old stories. But to really recognize that you could take this
Some principles. Yeah.
yeah, and like turn around and live it out, I was blown away because they worked. It was
Right.
like, oh wow, okay.
Wow.
So don't worry about anything, but seek first God's kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be added unto me. Okay,
Yeah.
and so like I did that, and everything
That
started working out,
that has
and
been one of the most powerful things because being an entrepreneur is scary
yeah,
because when you rely on somebody's paycheck, and I have for so long, that all of these new scriptures, they're becoming real and relevant to me, where before it was like not so much. But that's one of them. It's like, so I'm not supposed to worry. And it's weird because everything always works out. And I did worry. I worried myself into a freaking bleeding ulcer, right?
yeah,
But when I begin to put into practice, the word like you're talking about, then there's peace and a calmness. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So it's powerful, powerful stuff.
Yeah, one of my favorite ones with that, it says, "Don't be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and
Prayer and
supplication with
supplication. Mhm.
thanksgiving, present your request to God, and the peace of God that transcends all understanding will guard
Guard
your
your
hearts
heart
and your
and mind.
minds
Yeah.
in Christ Jesus." And like I would be worried. One of the real big pitfalls with a lot of the guys, because I was at a facility, all male facility, faith-based facility. There were about 50 men there. I started off just doing odd jobs because to earn your keep, so to speak, like that's why it didn't cost because you were going to work. But it's an offshoot of Teen Challenge. I don't know if you've ever
Oh,
heard
I'm
of Teen
very
Challenge, but
familiar. I interviewed the castle over in Riverside, California.
okay,
It was
cool.
awesome. Yeah.
Well, they use Teen Challenge's curriculum
Uh-huh.
and they send people to Cape Girardeau to finish up, which is Teen Challenge's U.S. headquarters is in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. and or one of them anyway. But they they use their curriculum, but keep most of the guys that are essential there on campus. And I couldn't leave the state, so I stayed there instead of going to Cape. But for that year, I was trained on Teen Challenges curriculum, and I remember watching guys start to get worried about situations happening with their family or with even the world. It was the craziest thing. Like we were talking about going to war with Syria or something during that time,
Mm-hmm.
and like three guys left because they thought we were fixing to go to war with Syria and they wanted to be with their families. Like they used anything at all to
Anything. Yeah.
as an
I
excuse to
totally
go
get
back
that.
out. And that verse, like that section of verses, totally changed everything for me. It was like, okay, don't be anxious about anything. So don't sweat any of it. But in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Okay, I got it. So I just started praying about everything and thanking God for answering the prayer
Mm-hmm.
and keeping my eyes and my ears open to his answers so that I understood what he was doing. And it just changed. Everything changed. Like no more anxiety, no more stress, no more worry. No, I still deal with everybody deals with that kind of stuff, but it wasn't to the degree that it once was.
Yeah.
And
Dominating your life. Right.
exactly,
Right. Mm-hmm.
exactly. But that was a beautiful time in my life. I was the head cook, so I cooked breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 50 men, and it was the perfect position for me because my schedule was the exact opposite of everybody else's because I had to have the food ready. So I got to have the whole kitchen to myself, other than the other guys that helped me prepare the meals and serve the meals and clean up after. But I got to have the whole kitchen to myself. So I would literally just sit in the kitchen and read the Bible. And there was a couple other books that I read while I was there outside of the Bible, but it was just it was perfect. It was exactly what I needed. God
Yeah.
knew what I needed, and I remember telling people that the man I was after 3 months in there was nothing compared to the man that I was after 6 months, and then the man that I was at 6 months was a child compared to the man I was at 10 months.
Yeah. It's
And
amazing, this exponential growth we experience when we
yeah,
just get in there and get serious, man. It's amazing.
it is. It really is. I recommend, like, I've got several people now that reach out to me. I do counseling and mentorship, and there's families that there's man, addiction's such a big deal now. It's in every family. It doesn't matter what the income level, where they live. Like everybody knows somebody that's either addicted or in recovery,
Yeah.
and they'll reach out to me and they'll say, "Okay, I think I'm gonna send him to this 30-day treatment." I was like, "Look." It's worked for some people. I'll say that, but send them to the longest one possible because they're gonna hate that, but it is the very best thing for them.
Yeah.
Because I remember it was a good thing that I was court ordered to that year because there were days that I wanted to leave. But I knew that if I left, I was going to prison, so it was better just to stay. Um, but I tell
Right.
people all the time, look, get them court ordered to a year long program because
Yeah.
you're totally different 3 months in than you are 6 months and
Yeah.
9 months. And I've just taken that and I've ran with it. My wife has run alongside me, and that's been very, very helpful. She's been such a blessing. God put exactly the right woman in my life who stood with me. Although she was involved, her dad was pressuring her to divorce me, and all this stuff, and
Yeah.
she stood by my side the whole way through. And she's been a huge, huge encouragement. So
That's awesome.
it's been awesome. But today, um, though, just to kind of finish this off, I graduated from there and went to court. I did get put on drug court, which was the best thing because it gave me a system of accountability. Even though I'd been in there and I'd fell in love with Jesus and been doing this for a year and had all this clean time, it was good because I was out in the world again, and I wasn't in that spiritual bubble of being in a
Yeah.
facility, and you're faced with all the problems of the world. Now you've got bills and you've got more stress and all this stuff. So having that 3 years of accountability was amazing, knowing that I was going to get drug tested 3 or 4 times a week, at least twice a week. It was really, really good. But I went through drug court. I graduated from there, and so my record has been expunged. While I was on drug court, I knew that I had been called into the ministry. And so I started serving as a helper in the youth group where I was at. And then I took a youth pastor position at another church, served there for 4 years. I recently stepped down from that a few months back. And now I've started doing what I'm doing now with the
Yeah.
Unshakable Life. Now I have submitted myself to another local church. I believe it's important to be under the authority of a local pastor and have a local body. And so we do have a local church that we attend regularly. And in January, I'll be starting my biblical counseling certification.
Nice.
And it's the most highly sought after, most difficult certification you can get when it comes to biblical counseling. But I'm excited about it. I'm going to specialize in addiction, marriage counseling, and reconciliation.
Nice.
But I should be finished with that sometime, either in the middle or towards the end of next year, because it's a lot. It just depends on how quick I can get after it. But
Yeah.
um, once I finish the counseling certification, I plan on going full time into counseling and having my own practice. And
That's
so
awesome.
doing the Unshakable Life and all the things involved with that on Facebook, Instagram, the podcast, YouTube channel, and then having my own private practice where I'll do something kind of like this, where I can do counseling over the internet and
Yeah.
do counseling, one-on-one counseling in person, and do group events and stuff like that,
That's
retreats.
powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely got the same mindset.
Yeah.
Hey, what advice would you give somebody just starting out this journey? Because I know they might be looking at their life and they've made a couple steps in the right direction, and they're kind of wobbly,
Yeah.
and they just need encouragement and support. Like what advice would you give just starting out?
Um, well, and you're talking about starting out in reference to
Just kind of like
recovery.
recovery. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
just coming into it.
Absolutely. If you're a man or woman of faith, I would highly recommend finding a local mentor, somebody that you can just get in there with every single day. Every time you're struggling, you can pick up the phone and call them or text them or meet them for coffee or whatever. um, a mentor will totally change your life. That's one of the things that I still have to this very day. I'm 7 years in, and it's life changing. But as a companion with that, because your mentor would tell you this, but stay in God's word
Yeah.
every day without fail, even if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But coupling that with prayer, it's kind of like I don't know. One of my mentors told me a while back. It's been years ago. If you could, I usually draw it out for people, but I don't know how well you'd be able to see it here. But if you had like a circle in the middle, and if you could just draw layers of circles around that little dot in the center,
Hmm.
and imagine that each one of those layers is a protection against
Oh, that's
relapse.
good.
And
That's really good.
the very center dot is relapse. The more layers you have, the less likely you are to relapse, and the more joy and purpose you're going to have in your life. Some of those layers will be real easy to break. Like, your family probably didn't stop you from using before, but your family's still a layer. So like maybe your wife is a layer, your kid is a layer, or kids are a layer. Your local church is a layer,
Hmm.
your local Bible study or NA or AA meetings. I have no problem with NA or AA meetings. They're good. They serve a certain purpose, and they have some really good knowledge in there. I don't. It's kind of like anything else. Eat the meat, spit out the bone. But
Mhm.
they have some really really good stuff. But anyway, each one of those layers, if you can imagine a traumatic event, is going to pierce down through those layers. Well, that the kids might not stop. Hopefully, they didn't mess up the audio too bad.
No,
Um,
we're good.
the kids may not stop you. That layer may not stop you. The wife may not stop you. The church may not stop you. But that mentor is going to stop you.
Yeah,
And then you can rebuild on those layers again,
it's
because
powerful.
life is going to happen. That's We live in a fallen world, and there's bad stuff that happens every day, and you're going to go through peaks and mountaintops and valleys, and life's going to be great one day and really tough the next. And so you need those layers. But the
Yeah,
mentor is one of the most important ones.
it's powerful. I just want to throw out there just another layer. It's pretty popular lately, but it's just getting in touch with your why. And when it comes to recovery, we need to make it plain, like put it on paper. Like, why am I doing this? Why do I want this?
Yeah.
I actually have it right up here. It's long. It's quite a bit. I look at it every single day, but it has everything to do with my legacy and that I want to leave, the impact that I want to make on other people, programs that I want to build, the books that I want to write, financial goals, intimacy goals, just everything holistic to my life. So it's just like
Yeah.
when opposing desires come in, because we all have them, these opposing desires that conflict
Yeah.
my why, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but it's pretty strong. It's a pretty
Yeah.
strong why. And so I think we just, think about those things and let it sink in deep, so we can withstand those little pressures.
Yeah. That's really, really good, because I can tell you that why, and before people started saying it, like that term, find your
Right.
why and all that, like before it became a
The church
popular
had it.
thing.
The church
Yeah.
had it for a
Um,
long time.
yeah. And I didn't even
Uh,
realize that it was a thing. And I kind of did it. Because one of my mentors told me to write down, what is your goals in life? Like, why are you doing this? Why are you in recovery? What's the purpose behind all of this? And so I literally wrote pages of stuff, like talking about different relationships and all this stuff. And he says, okay, now condense it down into a couple sentences. And I was like, what? Like, I can't do that. Like, I just wrote 15
uh,
pages, man.
my mission is to pursue my why. No, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Uh,
so I started off with, basically, because we didn't have our daughter at the time, but that I lived 150 miles an hour for Satan. And so, because I had been saved and redeemed, and God literally saved my life, because I should have either one overdosed or been killed in the middle of a drug deal for $500,000. Um, uh, there's so many things that should have happened but didn't. So I was determined to live at 150 miles an hour or better for God. And I was determined to learn apologetics, because like I said, I was really well versed on the other side, and so I wanted to be able to be on this side and be able to try to help people understand that Christianity is valid and the Word of God is truthful, and we have a lot of data to back that up, a lot of
right.
historical data. And anyway, I put all that together and I was like, okay, I'm devoting my whole self to Christ in every aspect, everything that I do. And that was my initial thing. Like, that's how I condensed it down. But now, kind of like you, I want to leave a legacy. I want to bring my daughter up in the instruction and discipline of the Lord. I want to be able to look back on my life and say, as for me and my house, we serve the Lord.
Hmm.
Going down to grandkids and great grandkids, and just leave a lasting
Yeah.
touch on everybody in my family
It's
and
powerful.
those that are not in my family, you know.
Yeah, I have the same desire. I want to, 4 or 5 generations, because my parents' generation, they left a legacy of shame, and failure,
Yeah,
and there's been this ripple effect of sin that has traveled through my family that I experienced, and but it's getting weaker and weaker, and it's getting weaker because of the stand that I took. You know what
that's
I
right.
mean? And so I don't want any doubt. And so I tell you, brother, when I leave this world, my legacy, my children, my grandchildren, they're gonna know what I'm about.
Yeah,
There's gonna be this trail of just content, books, and a podcast. Just
that's
they're
right.
gonna know. So the man,
Isn't
that's what
that
it's all
cool?
about. It is
And
cool.
isn't that so cool? Like we get to literally leave our voice and our face, and our videos for generations and generations and generations to go back and say, well, this is my great great grandfather,
Yeah,
and
it's
he
amazing.
helped people every day of his life. Like he helped people live according to God's word, and their lives were forever changed. And just knowing that you get to leave that for
Mhm,
forever,
mhm. It's
it's so
powerful.
cool.
It's
And
powerful.
I don't know if you ever think about this, and I don't mean to take up a whole bunch of time,
Oh,
but
that's okay.
I think about standing before Jesus, whenever our lives end or whenever he returns or whatever the case is. And I always call it the web, but it's kind of like, you touched this one person's life by something you said or did, and then they went and touched 100 people, and then those 100 people went and touched five more people. And like I think of like a spider web, and it just
Yeah.
keeps kind of like branching out and branching out and branching out. My wife and I were talking about this yesterday because a lot of what we do really shifted about 9 months ago. And it happened from a comment on a post on Facebook. Somebody had left a link to a movie, and we went and watched the movie, and I was blown away, and so was my wife. And I said, thinking back, like that one person is going to get such a reward for
Mhm.
making a comment on a Facebook post,
Isn't that crazy?
and they
Oh
probably
my
don't even
goodness.
realize that, like how much it changed us and changed other people. But one day we're going to stand before the king, and he's going to give us a clear picture, good and bad, of what our decisions, our words, the idle words and the ones spoken in love, the effect that they had. And I want to leave that legacy, like you're saying. I want to
Yeah.
leave all words of love and wisdom to help people break free from this mess, man. Because the world will tangle you up, and you'll lose your life before you know it. But God has freedom, and He has answers.
Mm, that's powerful, brother.
Yep.
So, I'm gonna wrap this up. Where can people find you? Do you have a website, blog?
Yeah, you can go to theunshakablelife.com,
Okay.
and you can find me literally everywhere, either by one of two names, either Jesse James Ferrel, my
Hmm.
name, or The Unshakable Life.
Yeah.
But I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Got the blog, got the podcast, got the website. You can find me on anywhere podcasts are available: Apple Podcast, Stitcher, all that stuff. So
Awesome.
either The Unshakable Life or Jesse James Farrell.
Awesome, brother. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, man.
All
God
righty.
bless you.
All right. You too, brother. Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye.